Young one, before you turn in, I must ask that you take some time aside with me. You have made a great choice to leave your people and follow me here, so I wish to teach you of the space we now enter. And indeed, we have some time to kill before your turn in the rest schedule. I will tell you the tale of Spellspace that you now enter, and its history as I have learned it. This tale will be a while, so settle in. A long time ago, on a world that is now at the center of Spellspace, the Arcane was created by an ancient race of people. This Arcane is of magic, which is commonplace in Spellspace. But I suppose magic is something that you do not understand. We will talk of magic in time, but before then, we must discuss the Ancient Ones. These Ancient Ones also had no magic, and they got by in an old way. I suppose it must be similar to how your people have gotten by, only much more advanced, I surmise. The most appropriate word I have seen in ancient writings for this way is science. It is an old word, lost to time in our common tongue. It is the study of the material and things and how they interact with each other without the presence of magic, like the ability to create fire from materials like flint and steel, as some do instead of the use of a proper spell, though I suppose this concept is likely already of your understanding. Another word I have read frequently in ancient writings is this: technology. Technology is like what the artificers create in our time, which you do not understand, but you will in the future. Only the Ancient Ones use science and electricity rather than the arcane. The electricity that we see in Spellspace is most commonly used in magics of the lightning variety. According to my readings, alongside technology, electricity has great potential, rivaling that of magic, although it is much more difficult to use. I did not delve deeper into the subjects of technology, as it seemed to be an outdated art, made obsolete by magic. In fact, it seems the entire reason that the Ancient Ones created magic in the first place was to escape from the restraints of technology. We have, truly, no need for this technology any longer. However, the word science, I believe, is still quite relevant, despite being lost to time. The knowledge of science may be a great key in moving our understanding of magic even further than any of the other old stubborn wizards believe possible. I have gathered many ancient writings of science. However, this is not a science lesson, but one in history, so we will move on from the subject. The Ancient Ones, through the study of science, learned of a great potential that resided outside of their perceivable reality. This potential was what we now call magic, and presently permeates Spellspace. They sought to bridge the gap, as it were, between our material world and this conceptual outer reality of potential. The Ancient Ones described this reality as the higher dimensions. These dimensions are of a concept that is very difficult to explain, but I can say that our reality resides in 3 dimensions, or at least as we perceive it. I will not describe what these 3 are, but I will say that they are largely numerical, hence their complexity. The Ancient Ones learned through science of dimensions beyond ours, the 3rd. They learned of the 4th, the 5th, and beyond. In these higher dimensions, there lies magic. This again is science, which becomes immensely difficult to understand, and even more so to explain. Even with my great study and wisdom, I have trouble understanding it fully. But the essence of their ambition was this: they sought power outside of their reality, the likes of which one can barely comprehend, and the use of it is what we now call magic, at least as it is understood in our time. And so, in some great effort, the Ancient Ones attempted to bridge the gap between reality and the realm of magic, and control that power for themselves. And they succeeded, however, only partially. Their effort to control magic was this: they crafted the arcane script, a language meant to command magic to their whim, a language bound to the very fabric of reality itself. The language was, and is, immensely complex. It contains all of their boundless knowledge of science and the material, and contains an unknowable amount of characters, potentially even hundreds or more, each with many meanings and uses. I would describe it as such. It was as though they attempted to tap into a great barrel of fine liquor, not of common spirits, but of the nectar of the gods, and their spout was the arcane script. At first, they believed that they had succeeded completely. They were able to use the arcane script to manipulate magic, and effectively replicate things that were normally much more difficult with the use of mere technology. For a short time, the Ancient Ones were indeed prosperous. Unfortunately, they had no way of knowing the impending disaster that approached them, and they took all the time that they could manage to carefully and very slowly, much too slowly in fact, develop spells and enchantments with their powerful arcane script. They indeed took too much time, and they were eventually completely overcome by inordinate disaster. This was what we now call the Great Cataclysm, and took place thousands of years ago. Many believe this Great Cataclysm to be the beginning of our universe. In reality, it was a consequence of the actions of the Ancient Ones, and in fact, a consequence of the creation of the very arcane script that they sought to improve their lives. To explain this disaster to you, I must invoke another ancient word under the umbrella of science. This word is evolution. It is likely a word that you have heard before, but in our time it holds a simpler meaning. For us, it usually means growth and improvement, sometimes gradual, sometimes sudden. For the Ancient Ones, it was different. For them, it was actually an understanding of change over the course of millions or even billions of years. These numbers are indeed so large, one can barely comprehend them. It was particularly the change of life over such great amounts of time that was the meaning of evolution. Currently, most in Spellspace believe that life is a product of magic, that some ancient god created life as some benevolent or cruel act, using magic as its source. This entity that people have conjured in this way goes by many different names, depending on the culture, but its tree is usually named the same: Yggdrasil. The branching influence of magic over our universe is most often described as the roots of Yggdrasil branching out over Spellspace. The Tree of Life, they call it. From what I have learned, this name, Yggdrasil, actually originates from an ancient mythology that spawned out of the minds of the Ancient Ones themselves. They knew it to be a myth. However, it seems that out of the Great Cataclysm, that perspective had shifted to a delusional reality for many. The reason I tell you this is because life, as a matter of fact, originated long before magic existed or held any influence over our reality. From what I have read, it seems that life predates magic by possibly billions of years, and the roots of Yggdrasil are in reality a shattering pattern over our universe. This pattern originates from the home world of the Ancient Ones. It is as though a great glass barrier was punctured improperly, and magic now seeps through the consequential cracks. Before the Ancient Ones shattered this metaphorical glass, evolution was indeed as they understood it, the gradual change of life over the course of millions or billions of years, and a factor of science rather than magic. But after their actions in tapping into the realms of magic, this changed. Indeed, they were able to control the magic that flowed from their tap, the arcane script, but they could not control the magic that seeped through the cracks. This magic escaped their awareness and began to influence all aspects of their universe. This includes everything, the very earth of the worlds, crystals and metals, the weight of the air, even the space in between worlds. However, most predominantly, it affected life and the process of evolution. You see, magic seemed to have a great influence over life once it began to affect it. Life forms began to change far more rapidly and unpredictably than before. From what I read, it was a mere few decades before the wildlife in their world began to change and trouble them greatly. In your world, it is merely sheep and keeping wild wolflings away from them. What would your people do then if one very unexpected day they saw dragons soaring above their communities? It is unlikely that many would survive. Your people understand the power of dragons in their myths, but there were many great creatures of such strength as dragons that began to terrorize the Ancient Ones at the onset of the Great Cataclysm. Writings of the time are very rare, and they are always written in the prose of panic and survival. This was in fact what happened first to the Ancient Ones. Monsters of unimaginable power began to emerge from the boundaries of their world and began the devastation of their civilizations. The Ancient Ones did not survive, or at least not as they once were. You see, my discovery of this history was not from their world. No, the writings that I have found were in fact from my journeys across the breadth of Spellspace, scattered like dust in the spectral winds. I had to piece together this history myself from a great many varying ancient accounts. I have learned enough to realize that the Ancient Ones had fled from their home planet using the arcane spells that they were able to develop, and they spread wildly across the known spell space in desperation for their survival. It was, for them, the further they fled from their home, the more likely that they were to survive. The magic of the roots of Yggdrasil are as such. The further one climbs the roots, the greater one finds the presence of magic, until one reaches the trunk, where the magic power is so great that the tree will absorb the very essence of life itself. The truth is, of course, that as you reach the center of spell space and the origin world of magic, the presence of magic becomes its most powerful. I have attempted the journey, you see, to the center of spell space to find the origin world. However, what I found was little more than pure terror. Unfortunately, I had no choice but to turn back before I was able to make it very far, as many of the lives of my old crew were lost. Some to the mere pressure of magic, and others to the terrifying creatures that contested us there. Understand this: dragons are some of the most powerful known creatures in spell space, and yet even they are reluctant to approach the trunk of Yggdrasil. In this short, harrowing journey, with my magical instruments and spells of perception, all that I learned was this: somewhere in the center of spell space, where I surmise to be the location of the origin world, there is only blackness, an all-consuming darkness, around which everything revolves. I do not believe that any individual can hold any hope of learning what is left there. My best guess is that the influence of magic on the home of the Ancient Ones became too great, and turn the place into a magical void of pure devastation. I fear that I will never be able to learn the truth. I am likely one of the few humanoids in Spellspace with any understanding of that place. If any others know, I have not learned it from them, and they keep it as a closely guarded secret. Indeed, knowing of this place would prove to be no boon to any, but rather a temptation of knowledge that can only lead to one's demise. If you truly do intend to succeed me, I offer you this: never go there, unless you are willing to risk everything you have, as I had unknowingly done. But alas, I must not be distracted by my own fascinations. The history of Spellspace does not lie in this origin world, but rather in what happened to the Ancient Ones that fled from it. They traversed space as far as they could, down the roots of Yggdrasil, in order to escape from the pure potency of the magic that was near their world. Some made it further than others. From what I understand, being so long ago, their enchantments for space traversal were less developed. I also presume that the space they traveled was different as well. Magic now fills the space between worlds and systems. But before magic, space was exactly as it sounds. Space. Emptiness. It was literally nothingness. I was not sure of this fact until I ventured this journey to your world, which lies just outside the reach of Yggdrasil's roots. Truly, nothing is here in space. One cannot ride the currents of magic in space past the great tree's influence. We call these currents the spectral winds. Reaching your star system took me much longer than I anticipated, as, without the spectral winds, I believe not only our momentum was slower, but the space in between systems was larger. It will be a shorter journey back now, as I was able to create enchantments for greater momentum. These, which will be unfortunately completely impractical for use in Spellspace, as they would prove far too taxing for our ship in normal circumstances. I must also admit, using enchantments as powerful as these draws significant amounts of magic from my gate and takes quite a toll on me. This gate is something I must teach you about later, and will be quite important if you choose to succeed me. It is an enchantment of my own design and very potent, but once again, my fascinations get the better of me. Let us continue our lesson in history. The Ancient Ones, they fled across Spellspace. Now that I think it, I will change the term I use for the Ancient Ones. Your people call yourselves humans, and I believe you and they are far closer to the Ancient Ones in physiology than any other of the humanoids in Spellspace. I will now call them Ancient Humans, as you are so close in heritage. I am human as well, but from what I have learned, our physiologies differ a surprising amount. Humanoid is a common term in Spellspace, and humans are the most similar to the Ancient Ones and originate closer to the edge of Spellspace. Humanoid is a common term for any species that is quite human-like, though some of the races may not appreciate that terminology, as they often believe themselves to be descended from some other source. From what I have learned, the majority of the sapient species in Spellspace have likely descended from the Ancient Ones, the Ancient Humans. Ah, I see your questioning look. This is in fact not another tangent, as this subject ties in quite appropriately with our history lesson. You see, Ancient Humans had scattered across Spellspace, some further from the trunk of Yggdrasil than others, and from my journeys I have surmised that the Ancient Humans began to experience the effects of rapid magical evolution as well. This evolution seemed to have affected the Ancient Ones proportionally to their closeness to the center of Spellspace and the amount of magic present there. There are races of people far more distinct from humans that originate closer to the center of spell space, and the ones towards the edge are more human-like. And then there are people like mine, who reside at the very edge and are nearly indistinguishable from the ancient humans. The peoples that are more similar to humans, but different enough to notice, are just a bit further in, originating in the Landier's belt, which we will discuss soon enough. These people might be thinner or sturdier, taller or shorter, perhaps of stronger constitution or more longevity. As you get closer to the center, you will find the origins of people that become more distinct, with diverse colors of skin or statures, and often with greater strength or resilience. The closer you are to the trunk, the more diversity you find. You begin to find those with scales of fur, claws, horns, and more varying physiology, sometimes with tails, or more arms or legs. This is what I have learned for the origins of these peoples. However, now in spell space, you will find a different social climate. Magic is quite developed as of this age in spell space, and interstar system traversal is quite common. In many places, especially worlds with great civilizations and trade, you will find many different peoples from across the breadth of spell space, particularly in Antil's Belt of Spellspace, where magic is potent enough for common use, but also without having too dangerous of monstrous life. Yes, the common understanding of spell space for the usual spacer is just that, of the belts. Antil's Belt is the most populated of the belts, and our destination. Antil's name originates from a great explorer who gained great renown at the start of the age of trade in spell space. It was his efforts that established the mapping of the belts and began the age of trade, which brought so many of the races together, for better or worse. In my studies of history, it is a sure sign of the success of a civilization when the peoples begin to war with each other rather than continue their wars with the natural world. Let us continue our discussion of the belts. Away from the center of spell space, from Antos, you will find the Landier's Belt, which I mentioned before, where life is generally simpler and is the largest of the belts. If you go towards the center from Antos, you'll find the Conflict Belt, where more dangerous life and warring cultures will be found. Even further in from there is the Devil's Belt, with extraordinarily dangerous lands and monsters to test one's survival. Past that is the Zone of Abhorration. There, nearly none can live, and that place is where I attempted my journey to the origin world so long ago. And the last belt we will discuss is back again towards the very edge of spell space, past the Landiers, where you will find the Barren Belt. This is where magic is minimal, and where sparse civilizations of my kind will be found. My people, humans, are the least magical of the sapient races of spell space. My people generally lead simpler lives, and are not too different from yours, in fact. Any who travel the lengths of spell space must usually stop here, or risk being lost to the spaces without magic. Of course, you might wonder how a human such as myself became such a potent wizard. With a proper understanding and application of magic, it is possible to level the odds, as it were, with the more magical races. Humans like myself, who journey deeper into spell space, have taken to applying certain enchantments to themselves to allow magic to grant them more physical advantages. One advantage of being human is that the magic that flows through a human system is generally more pure and therefore more malleable. For you, I expect, it will be even purer, which will be quite the strength with proper application. As for the other races, magic of course affects them more greatly. A sapient being originating from the Landier's Belt might have greater longevity or natural magics. Those that originate deeper may have greater powers that are likened to that of the terrifying monsters that also reside in those places. I will not go over the varying physiologies of the many races in Spellspace, but a simple rule would be this: the less they look like you or I, the more magical they likely are. Though this rule is not infallible, and I would encourage you to have a flexible mind no matter what kind of being you may encounter. And before we conclude, I would also like to describe the magics that I have encountered more thoroughly. This is, of course, the arcane script, which is perhaps the most common of the magics in Spellspace. With understanding and practice, anyone may use the spells and enchantments of the arcane for themselves, though some of the more magical races have greater trouble with the arcane script, as the magic in their bodies have already been influenced by their natural powers. I have, however, met wizards of the deeper races, as there are certain signatures in their bodies that can be recognized and be counteracted with particular runology. But most often, those people will take advantage of their own natural powers to succeed in Spellspace. We will continue our lessons in the arcane script later on in our journeys. However, I will tell you this: the arcane is immensely complex. As I have explained before, most of the spells and enchantments in Spellspace have existed for a long while, and innovation in the field is quite rare. There are only a few notable wizards, like myself, who have made advancements in the arcane script. Those of us who have done so have found knowledge of the Ancient Ones in ruins of ancient archives, or discovered sealed ancient knowledge discovered by others. I have traveled much of Spellspace, and yet there is much of the arcane that I do not understand. I have mentioned spells and enchantments, so I will provide you with some knowledge on the subject for now. Most magics of the arcane script are written as enchantments, but some are spells, the runes of which are inscribed in one's mind's eye, or with spoken verbiage. Many arcane magics are very complex, and therefore recounting one as a spell is extraordinarily difficult, and so most spells are of simpler magics. The more complex the magic, the greater the need for an enchantment. An enchantment is written, and the very runes that are written have power. However, for the activation of an enchantment, an incantation is required, which is much like a spell, and is usually called an incantation spell. You must imagine or incant the arcane runes of the spell as they correlate with the enchantment in order to activate it. But alas, the further we discuss these arcane magics, the more complex our discussion becomes, so we must conclude this lesson for now. And so, we will continue our talks with the other magics that are commonly found. Magic is a sort of energy with infinite potential. It takes on properties as it is directed, overtly or inadvertently, by its host. This can be with the arcane script, or can be with one's own natural body. As I have described before, most life forms in Spellspace have evolved to take advantage of the presence of magic. But there are other ways one can find and use magic. There are minerals and crystals of the earth that contain magic, which can be tapped into for various uses. Often, these will be used alongside the arcane script, or in whatever natural form they take. There are also the magical powers of plant life, which many have the ability to understand and manipulate. Minerals and plant life are commonly used in alchemy, the creation of potions, or in druidology, a sort of knowledge and wisdom of connection to these magics. There are other magics I have encountered over the years. You see, descendants of the Ancient Ones often had to be clever or desperate in order to survive the conditions they found themselves in. Many magics that people have used are not of their own, but of magics gifted to them. Many have pledged service to the great creatures that they have found in their worlds. Some of these powerful creatures have developed their own sapience, under the influence of magic and are not in fact descended from the Ancient Ones. They often develop symbiotic communities with peoples that are descended from the Ancient Ones, granting them powers and protection for their servitude or assistance. And of course, there are the gods that have populated Spellspace as well. These are beings that are worshipped or feared by the peoples of Spellspace. It has been difficult to understand where these gods have originated, as from what I have read, they likely did not predate the existence of magic, at least not in our reality. Some of these gods are indeed simply powerful creatures that people have pledged service to and are perceived as gods. However, there are other gods that defy this explanation. I have a theory of how some of these gods have come to exist, one that is difficult to prove. I believe that perhaps the potential of magic is in fact so great that the very collective imaginations of these peoples, of these religions, is what had conjured these gods into existence. If my theory is true, it speaks to the infinite potential of magic, as some of these gods are indeed more powerful than almost anything else that can be found in Spellspace. If you encounter a god, even if you do not worship them or believe in their omnipotence, I encourage you to approach them with great respect. They can indeed prove to be the greatest of enemies. It is even possible that a god may assist you in your endeavors and prove to be a great ally. I have certainly dealt with both, and now I simply avoid them altogether in order to avoid further complicating the matters of which I attend to. Most of the cultures in Spellspace have some sort of god or religion of which they worship or simply pay homage to, so you must always be wary of the gods. And so, that concludes our talks of magic. These are the ones that are most common and what I understand best. However, truly, magic is a thing of infinite potential, so there is always more to be discovered in the untread corners of Spellspace. In fact, as we approach the edge and the barren belt, I must teach you more of the arcane. Soon, I will inscribe an enchantment into you, which will help you in your survival in the event of an unexpected encounter. Although not many at the edges of Spellspace will rival me or mine crew. But of course, a wizard must always be prepared. I must confess, to many, my reputation is less of a wizard, and sometimes of other less flattering things. Well, these are tales for another time. I hope as we journey that you will learn to trust me. I have indeed journeyed far to find one worthy of my inheritance, but ultimately it is your choice to make. Well, the time for your rest draws near. There are many other things one could discuss on the topic of the history of Spellspace, but I simply cannot cover them all. There are many different worlds, creatures, civilizations, cultures, religions, and gods we could discuss, but I'm afraid we would only reach the end at the time of which you would grow older than I. As these things become prudent in our journeys, I will, of course, continue to teach you what I know. If you have any questions, I urge you to save them for the morrow, for I am weary. I have said all that I can, and I must save my energy for the magics necessary to propel our spell vessel further, so that we may reach Spellspace yet. When we have rested proper, we will continue our discussions of magics, as you have much to learn. These histories that I have taught you are no match for the breadth of the arcane. Ooh.